Okay, so we're going to start talking about congruent triangles now. All right, so our essential question here, what does it mean for two triangles to be congruent? So if you look at these two triangles down here, in order for two triangles to be congruent, they have to have the same size and shape. But really the most important part is this second statement here. This means that all corresponding parts, the angles and the sides, in other words, have to be congruent. So this would have to be congruent to this because they correspond to each other, so they have to be congruent. This angle has to be congruent to this angle. This angle would need to be congruent to this angle. And then this side to this side, this side to this side, and this side to this side. So that's what it means. The three angles that correspond to each other and the three sides that correspond to each other have to all be congruent. That's how we know that two triangles are congruent. Okay. So when you write a congruent statement about triangles, you have to do it in a very specific way. So it says here, a valid congruency statement must match all corresponding angles and sides. So what does that mean? Well, I'm going to say these two triangles are congruent. You can see that they have three angles congruent and three sides congruent to each other. So we need to find those. So you'll see here, A is congruent to D. Okay, there's our first angle. B is congruent to E, angle E, and then C is congruent to F. So when we say and write our triangle congruency statement, we need to make sure that those match up in the right order. So when I write triangle A, B, C is congruent to triangle. Now I need to write the letter that matches angle A. So notice this is A, the one that matches that has the same congruency is D. So that has to be first. Okay, now the second one here is B. It has two arcs, so I need the one that has two arcs here. So B and E should both be in the second position. Notice this is B is in the second position, so E has to be in the second position. Okay, and then lastly, C. So that's this one has to match with F, so that means F is next. Okay, so as long as their A matches the same position as D, you can write these in any order, but they have to be in the same position. So if I want to write C first, that's fine. I could also write triangle C, B, A. But if I do that, then I have to switch these and write triangle C has to match with F, right? C and F. So that means I need F first. B matches with E. And then A matches with D. Okay? I could write a whole bunch of these. You could do a third one here. But you probably get the picture. If I start with B, let's say B, A, C. That's fine as long as I stay in that same order. So B is first. That always matches with E. A is next, and that matches with D. And then C is next, which matches with F. So as long as they stay matching with each other, you're good. So those are called congruency statements. They tell you a whole lot. They tell you what angles match, but you'll notice they also tell you what sides match. So if you look at this, AB is right here. That should match DE, which is right here. Yep. Do they both have one arc or one tick mark? Yeah. So You can see that here and here. Yep, so they match. So that's important too. It'll also tell you what sides are congruent. Okay. So this abbreviation CPCTC, what the heck is that? This stands for, it's a big phrase, and so we use the abbreviation. It stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So let me get my pen going. There we go. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So all this means is that if we know that two triangles are congruent, then we know that all their corresponding parts are also congruent. So that's important. And we'll use that quite a bit later on. So that's called CPCTC. So the way that we write the triangle, the way we write the letters, the order matters because it tells us what parts are congruent. So when you write this, you can't just be haphazard about it. You really got to take your time. So notice here, J is in the first position. That means it matches P. It means those two angles are congruent. So I can say angle J is congruent to angle P. So I know that just by the position that they're in, which is why it's really important to write those correctly when you're doing it. Okay, because K is in the second position and Q is in the second position, I also know that those two are congruent. And then by the same token, the last one, would be, right, L and R. Okay, now I'll use a different color here. Let's do pink. We can also do the same thing with sides, just by the way that they're written. So the first two letters are JK. So that should be congruent. That side should be congruent to the first two letters in the second triangle. So this would say side JK is congruent to side PQ. Okay. And then the next thing we can do is the last two letters, like KL. That has to be congruent to the last two here, QR. Okay. So then which one haven't we done? That would be the first and the third, and the first and the third over here. So JL has to be congruent then to PR. And again, the order matters when you write those. So just be aware. You're looking at this, and so these statements are super important when you write those too. Okay, so now I can write this is called a congruency statement right here. So I could write another one of these by just starting with a different letter, but then making sure they stay in the same position. So let's say I started with L and I just went backwards. LKJ is congruent to then R, let's say triangle R. Triangle RQP. And notice they're still in the same position here. This is L is supposed to match R, and here L matches R. And I have that with all the letters there, so we're good. But that's why the congruency statements are so important, because they tell you what everything is about. Okay, so this I should be able to write what's congruent for every part just by looking at this statement right here. Okay, so complete each of the following statements. It says triangle KPEM is congruent to AYC. Complete each of the following statements. So I can just use just this statement. You could also start to diagram on the two triangles if you want. So you could say, well, I know that K is congruent to A, and you can start doing it that way. P is congruent to Y, or you can just use and continue that way, or you can just use this statement here. It's up to you. But I'm just going to use that statement up here. So KM is the first and the last. So that means the first and the last and the second one. So AC. Okay. And then CY, or this one, then this one. So that means MP. Okay. PK is the middle and then the first. So YA. Okay. Angle Y has to be congruent then to angle P. Angle, oops. I want my eraser here. Okay, and then angle K needs to, that's the first position. So the first position there is A. So angle, oops, angle A. Okay, so then it says angle AYC. Remember the vertex is in the middle, C. So it's really saying angle C, but it's in this same order. So I want to keep that same order here. So that would be angle KPM. Okay, and then they did different triangle congruency statements. So this one says triangle MPK. So that's just doing this one backwards. So I'm gonna do that same thing then. CYA would be the other one backwards. And then this one's YAC, so middle, first, third. So middle is P, and then the first is K, and then M. So just matching that. Again, you can use the picture if you want, but honestly, sometimes it's just easier to just use that statement. Okay. All right, so now you're going to be given some measures and you just want to make sure that it's correct. And you're just going to use this statement up here. Now here's where you might want to start to label stuff. So I know that S is congruent to B. Well, S is 67 here. So I'm going to put B 67. Okay. And then T and F are the same. Okay, so that means this and this are the same. And then W and N are the same. So that means they're both 82 degrees. Okay. So then I can also do the sides. We may as well do that. So ST is 17, so that means BF has to be the same, 17 centimeters. I guess I should write centimeters in there. Okay. I have FN is 14. So these last TW is then 14 as well. Okay. And then lastly, we have that last side WS. So that means NB has to also, this is 9, WS is 9 centimeters. So this means 9 centimeters. Okay. So now I just want to write down what I have. I've already done all the kind of hard work. BN is 9 centimeters. Just look at my picture. TW is 14. centimeters. BF is 17. Measure of angle W is 82 degrees. B is 67. And then F, we've got to add 67 and 82. Should be 149. Take that away from 180 is 31. So F is 31 degrees. And we got it. Okay. So we just used our congruency statement to figure out all that. Okay. So sometimes they'll throw variables in there. Again, you can do this. Don't be scared. You got this. All right. So again, it's helpful to label. So UV is congruent to TS. UV TS. So I'm just going to do that. If it helps to label everything. And then TR. Okay, that's this one and this one. So UW. Those two are the same. That means this one has to be the same. The last one. And then if it's helpful to do the angles too, you can do that. Doesn't look like we have any angles here, so it's probably not necessary. It looks like all the sides. So now I'm just gonna figure this out by setting up some stuff. To find x, I'm gonna go 12x minus 7 has to be equal to 50. So let's do that. Oh, excuse me, 53. I looked at the wrong one. So this should be equal to that. And I don't know what I was doing there. All right, equal to 53. There we go. Now add 7. Oh, forgot the x. Divide by 12. Divide by 12. X equals, that would be 5. Okay, so we've got x. Let's do y. Okay, so y is here, and that should be equal to this one. So we're going to say 5y minus 33 equals 57. Add 33 to both sides. Okay, and then I want to divide by 5. Divide by 5. So y equals 18. All right. And then lastly, to find z, we know that this has to be equal to this. 3z plus 14 equals 50. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. I get 3z equals 36. Divide by 3 on both sides. Z equals 12. Okay, so here's my 3 answers. I've got it. Okay, and that's it. Your assignment is doing this stuff. Congruent Triangles worksheet. Good luck. See ya.